Does the game work right? No. Shit run like garbage? None of it is optimized? Yeah? Well,
Joe was heated. He's really living up to that angry in his name, huh? Man, this must be one of his rants about one of the new Battlefield games, like 5 or 2042. You know, those absolute pieces of garbage.
do you see this on my screen right now? Do you see this
what
shit
did he say?
here? Battlefield 4, you done fucked it up. You done fucked up Battlefield 4.
Yep. Battlefield 4. This was his Battlefield 4 rant. Because while it's a game that we all love now, a lot of its less than stellar qualities at launch have been forgotten. And the don't pre-order Battlefield message is not just a meme, it is the first phase of the Battlefield cycle. I love Battlefield, and I have for a long time. So it's a shame that they keep making all these terrible games like Battlefield 3 and 4. Blasphemy, I hear you say. Those are incredible games, classics of the modern era. Well, they are now. But that is thanks to the Battlefield cycle. Almost every Battlefield game follows a distinct pattern. The first trailers are shown, hype, excitement fill the air. Claims made that it is now, in fact, it's time to finally kill Call of Duty.
It was really more about doing a more like cinematic destruction.
That's cute.
And then the game launches. It's buggy, probably completely broken, and everybody hates it. Then, over the coming months, the game is fixed and patched and repaired and patched and patched and patched some more, to the point where we now remember Battlefield 4 as an all-time classic shooter, despite this being its state at launch. So I thought it would be fun with the impending release of Battlefield 6 to take a look back at some of the recent Battlefield games and witness the Battlefield cycle in all of its glory and horror.
What the hell was that?
Battlefield 3 is incredible. It was my first game in the series personally, so it holds a very special place in my heart. I obviously have a lot of nostalgia for it, but it still holds up really well. I had to play all of these games in order to get B-roll for this video, and this game, it still feels awesome. However, it was not so smooth at launch. Despite the game clearly being great, having some of the best, smoothest gunplay around at the time, great feeling weapons, amazing maps, Damavand Peak remains to this day maybe my favorite map in any shooter. That, like, the base jump is just uncomparably epic. And yet, despite its clear underlying quality, there were some pretty major issues. Performance issues. You needed an absolute titan of a PC to run this game. Battlefield is a franchise that has always, relied on graphics as a selling point, and while Battlefield 3 was like 2 generations ahead of its time in terms of graphics, that came with the burden of requiring a monster PC. It certainly didn't help that the game wasn't optimized super well, so even if you did have a monster PC, you'd probably still have some issues. There were some crashes, some bugs, and of course, the online pass. I think the online pass has been, erased from a lot of people's memories with the passage of time, but I'm bringing it up here because it should not be forgotten. To play Battlefield 3 online on a console on Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3, you needed to enter a code. Every new copy of Battlefield 3 that was sold, included in the case was one shiny new online pass. Well, what if you did what people do with discs, which is lend them to a friend or trade them in at your local pawn shop? Well, look, what about the code? They were a one-time use code, so if you didn't have a new one, too bad. Luckily, EA would very generously sell you a new code for $10. This is, it's a trend that I'm surprised didn't catch on, because it is so completely nefarious that it just feels like something that would, There was also the battle log. So I got this game right when it came out on Xbox, and eventually I got it on PC. So I was introduced to the absolute horror that is the battle log. Because they decided that on PC, rather than instead of launching, like clicking play on the game and the game opening to like a menu, no, it would, when you click play, open a web page in your browser that was your menu. And it was awful. And it's still awful. At least today, it's kind of like, oh, this is a weird, quirky thing that I'm glad I don't have to deal with very much. But when this is the newest entry in your major, like, multi-billion-dollar shooter franchise, it's not a great first impression. There were also some really weird bugs with this game, like the Invisible Man glitch, where in the single player, sometimes your NPC buddies would just turn invisible. They could still, like, shoot enemies and stuff, but they'd be invisible. And this was 2011. It was a time when we cared a lot more about the single player in shooters. There was also one that I searched forever to find footage of this, and I couldn't find a clip of it. But I did find a Reddit post from like 2012 or 2011, like, saying the same thing, so I'm glad it wasn't just me. I didn't just hallucinate this. But there was a bug where if you had a grenade launcher and you put it away and then pulled it back out, it would, like, alchemy into a different grenade launcher. I have no idea how in the spaghetti code this was possible, but it was one of the most mind-blowing things I've ever seen. Luckily, the Battlefield cycle began. Battlefield 4 is by far the clearest example of the Battlefield cycle. This game was broken on launch. And we use the word broken a lot in, online in the video gaming space. This game was broken. It didn't work. It crashed constantly. Like, basically every match on the loading screen, you'd probably crash, if not just halfway through the match. The performance was horrible, regardless of what console or PC you were trying to run it on. The Siege of Shanghai, which was like the major flagship map of that game, the major destruction piece was the big skyscraper in the middle, which you could bring down, which looked really cool and still does, but it fills the whole map with dust and particle effects, which would just completely tank the performance of everybody in the lobby. I remember there were like verbal agreements in the chat to not blow up the skyscraper because it would make the game unplayable. It was the same on Lansing Dam. When you took down the dam, the map would become almost just so terrible to play. It was so completely bad. So completely bad. But DICE set to work pretty much immediately. Patches started flowing out. I'd actually forgotten this before I started writing this video, but they had actually set up a, like, the community test environment, where they basically put out, like, just tons of new patches, and they had the community basically QA test the game for them, and find out what worked and what didn't, so that they could put them into the official patches for the main game. They also released some really, really good DLC, which helped because the game was also just kind of lacking content. And all in all, it took the better part of a year for this game to reach an actually, like, playable state. But now that it has, it's amazing. What can I say? It's Battlefield 4. Like, if you're watching this game, good chance, very good chance, I think, you've played and you love Battlefield 4, as do I, because Battlefield 4 is awesome, but the launch was not. Battlefield 1. This one's actually kind of the exception here. The game was good when it came out. Sure, I could, nitpick some minor stuff here and there, but all in all, it was a great game. It remains a great game. Let's move on. Battlefield 5. And we're right back in the mud. Battlefield 5, unlike 3 and 4, managed to be controversial before it even came out. The initial trailer of this game featured a sassy British woman with a robot arm quipping at Nazis, and people didn't like it.
mates. Hello, old friend.
Battlefield is a series that has always taken a more grounded approach. While it obviously has some over-the-top moments in the game, its presentation has always been very down to earth. So to have this basically Marvel character running around in the trailer, people were not impressed. Obviously, the whole thing happened where people were upset, and then like game journalists were like, misogyny, and then the people were like, it's not misogyny, we just hate it. And like Battlefield 1, one of the DLCs had a woman on the cover, and people didn't freak out about it because it was portrayed in a much more, grounded way, not having a robot arm and making jokes in the middle of an active war zone. The then CEO of DICE said, and I quote, "Either accept it or don't buy the game. I'm fine with either." Which, on one hand, I do kind of respect for him sticking to his guns, but on the other hand, it's probably not the best way to sell copies of your video game. So everybody was mad. And then the game came out, and it didn't help. The usual bugs and performance issues were here, but this game also had some just absolutely horrendous netcode problems that like made everybody rubber band all over the place. I remember it was just dreadful. Luckily that got sorted out pretty quickly as the cycle began anew. The netcode was patched a couple months after release, thank Christ. The bugs and glitches got sorted out. Notably, some of the maps in this game were fairly questionable at launch, and then they released War in the Pacific, which genuinely might be like the single best piece of content of any Battlefield game ever. It's so good. All of the maps, all of the weapons, like 10 out of 10, absolutely peak. So that helped a lot too. There was one brief kind of step back where they just nerfed every single weapon across the board for like no reason, and the time to kill was like the slowest by far of any Battlefield game, but then they did quickly revert that, so no harm, no foul. Just ruined the game for like a month, but whatever. Battlefield 5 is a game that didn't sell very well, relatively, which is kind of a shame. It makes sense, but this game is so good now. If you are somebody who skipped this one, I don't blame you, but if you're looking for a way to pass the time for the next few weeks until Battlefield 6 comes out next month, I highly recommend this game. It is so smooth, it feels incredibly good. It honestly might be like my favorite game to play now. It's that good. Give it a try.
Hey, that was Battlefield 2042. Oh, I beat the shit out of an old woman that was trying to hit me with a Carl Gustav.
Battlefield 2042. It's actually kind of impressive that EA managed to make a game that both looks and runs worse than a game in the same franchise from exactly a decade before this one came out. So this game made it a little bit further than Battlefield 5 before the controversies set in. I remember the original trailer there was a lot of hype around it because it looked pretty cool. And then the beta came out, and we quickly realized all was not well, because good God did it run terribly. Not quite at Battlefield 4 levels of bad, but pretty darn close.
This is not a joke. This is not a meme. I loved every bit of the beta, and to give you context, my computer literally burst into flames while playing the beta. And we're not talking, oh man, my graphics card's getting a little hot, or ooh-wee, you could fry an egg on my CPU. We're talking an explosion on my motherboard with flames coming out of the back of my case like it's a Honda Civic in a Fast and Furious movie.
And we also realized that, oh no, these maps are horrible. The funny thing is, I actually don't hate this game now. The gunplay feels pretty nice. The performance issues have been smoothed out a lot. It's still not great. This game runs worse than Battlefield 6, which is kind of crazy, but it does. They've added a scoreboard, which if you played this game at launch, I bet you forgot they didn't even have that. And I kind of like the sort of near future aesthetic. It's a bit of a nice change from the usual Battlefield affair. This game, though, honestly, your experience with this game now will probably depend a lot on what maps and modes you decide to play. One of the biggest issues with the game at launch that remains to this day is that the devs decided to, they wanted to up the ante. How do we make this new entry in our franchise better? What if we just take Battlefield and make it bigger? So instead of 64 players, we'll up it to 128 players. And I understand how that could happen on paper. I do. The problem is that the maps got so big because there were so many players that there was basically nothing in between the points. Like on Conquest. It was 5 little maps and then 50,000 miles of desert in between all of this. Felt absolutely horrible if you were playing infantry, because you would have to run for about 15 minutes just to get to the next objective. There was just never anything between any of the points, which is usually the case, but they were so far apart it felt way more noticeable. And with how terribly the game did on launch, there just wasn't enough players to support 128 player matches a lot of the time. So it didn't go well. I actually like the game when it's on some of the newer maps, which are clearly designed for smaller matches of 64 players. I also just in general think Breakthrough is by far the best mode in this game, because it does, even on the bigger maps, it does force all of the players to kind of converge on a few areas instead of being all spread out. So just try to avoid the big maps, basically. I don't think they even have the 128 player modes anymore. They seem to just be gone. That's probably for the best. Unfortunately, just half the maps in the game are basically unplayable. But if you get the good half, it's actually pretty fun. Oh yeah, there's also the operators, which was another stupid decision. They removed classes and had Call of Duty operators. They've now since kind of ham-fisted all of the operators back into the 4 standard classes that we know, and it's a bit weird, but it's alright, it's fine. The Battlefield cycle did apply to 2042. The game is significantly better now than it was at launch. The problem is that the starting point was so low that they could only climb so far back up. What is the takeaway from all this? The point I'm trying to make is that DICE knows how to make great video games, but they never seem to be given enough time to do that, which is probably because EA. We hate you, EA. Never forget that. If DICE needed to delay the game by a couple months to hopefully fix up some of the problems that I hope don't exist, then I don't think anybody would blame them for that. I had originally ended this video with the that quote from Gabe Newell that late is just for a little while, but suck is forever. But that actually doesn't apply here. The whole point of the cycle that I've been describing is that the games suck on release, but then they get better, and then we all love them later. So basically my point is that nothing matters, and we're all gonna die someday. It's kind of a cynical view, isn't it? That, well, they can just release the games and they'll be terrible, but then fix it post-launch, and nobody will care in a few years. This isn't the happy ending that I was hoping for, but oh well. My name is Kamikaze. If you enjoyed or learned something in this video, click the little subscribe button, please and thank you. I will be making more videos soon. Goodbye.